Welcome back to another episode of the Boxscore Geeks. Apologies for the actual delay. We got on a regular schedule and then everything fell apart. And Brian, I actually could have done the Boxscore Geek show last week. I thought I was going to be traveling. And by traveling, what I actually meant was go to the airport, find out my plane was delayed, come back, find out my plane was delayed, go back, find out my plane was delayed till the next day, go back at 7 in the morning, find out my plane was delayed till the afternoon. Finally got out. It was very Truman Show-y, but we're back. We're back in time for the NBA playoffs. And Brian, I'm not going to say that I intentionally timed this show to be right after the Denver Nuggets being up 2-0 against the Los Angeles Lakers, but I'm not going to say that. How you feeling? I mean, unfortunately, your playoff, we kind of had this discussion. In some ways, it was nice for someone that's held their, had to basically have April and May and sometimes June blocked out for the last decade. Um, your evenings freed up a lot quicker than usual as a Golden State Warrior fan.
Yeah, it's nice. That scenario you were describing a few shows ago that they needed to thread the needle and get there, well, it didn't happen. They did not make the playoffs. But thankfully there's a lot of good teams in the playoffs, and we're in game 2 basically right now. The first round is when we're recording this on Tuesday, and we're about to see maybe the first lower seed team take a game, Indiana Pacers versus Giannis-less Bucks, or injured Giannis. I don't think he's playing. Maybe he is. But yeah, I mean, it's been pretty easy for the home team so far.
Yeah, I mean that has been the case. You mentioned that in a second with Tyrese Halliburton and the Indiana Pacers. Although, Brian, do you know who the secret sauce for this game of the Indiana Pacers is? They're hopefully going to be the first, as you noted, lower seeded seed to win in the playoffs so far. So far, the home teams, the top seeds have had it. Pascal Siakam playing amazingly. So maybe that trade actually paid off. And I was going to see, I actually do want to compare this year how he looked on Toronto versus Indiana, because we kind of noted, the name. Yeah, basically this lines up. He went from being a mediocre power forward center on Toronto, where after the loss of Kawhi a few years back, he started shouldering more of the load, taking more of the usage, and then went over to Indiana, where he is actually just playing more like his old self. Although, funny enough, I kind of want to look this at Basketball Reference. I think he's shooting just as much, but he's actually efficient. So maybe Halliburton's just a really good passer. Yeah, he's taking roughly the same number of shots per game. He was taking 16 field goals per game in Toronto and is up to 15.8 in Indiana. And in fact, is taking a higher usage because he was shooting the former in 35 minutes of play and is now shooting the latter in 32. But his shooting has just gone way up. So maybe it's just a better fit in Indiana than it was in Toronto, despite the fact that he's shooting more. And that was one of our theories, was that maybe he was shooting too much in Toronto and he'd shoot less in Indiana and be better. But no. Who was the flip side? The one who went to
the
one who went
Knicks,
to the
OG
Knicks.
Anunoby.
OG Anunoby did that. OG Anunoby went and behind Jalen Brunson, et cetera, started shooting less and improved, whereas Pascal went to Indiana, shot more, and is shooting better.
I don't know what to make of that Toronto situation, because, maybe you can say, well, going to Tyrese Halliburton, one of the best point guards in the league, that's helping, Siakam get the ball in better spots. But he had Fred VanVleet on the Raptors, and he went to Houston and has been one of the major reasons to turn Houston around. And the coach is Nick Nurse. I mean, he's not bad. He's on Philadelphia now, and I think Philadelphia is doing pretty well, all things considered, with their talent, and Embiid playing just horrendously injured right now. I feel so bad for the guy gutting it out. So yeah, I mean, the Raptors, that team just did not work for some reason.
Yeah, and I mean, you're not wrong on Philadelphia. In fact, I was debating writing an article at some point. We'll see if I get back that, like I mentioned, I was traveling all last week and just has fallen by the waysides of things I want to spend my time on. As an example, if you head over to patreon.com/Jeff May, it's actually on the free tier. I did a nerd episode with Jeff and Adam Todd Brown on G.I. Joe action figures, a real American hero in the 1980s, the reboot. So it's kind of like those things. But I was debating an article idea of things we were right about. An early season, I think you and I were discussing Boston, Philadelphia, and I want to say Minnesota
Mm.
or OKC, and we were just like, only one of those teams was going to hold the like 9 SRS, and that was Boston, and that came to fruition. And I said I just did not believe that Joel Embiid was going to be able to stay healthy, and that came true as well. So yeah, I mean, Philadelphia did a good job gutting it into the playoffs, but this has just become very commonplace for them, which is just irrespective of if he gets to play in the regular season, which did happen. I did not think Joel Embiid's MVP season should have happened because I didn't think he was ever going to play over 2,000 minutes at a regular season again. And he blew away my expectations and did and won an MVP. But he was banged up in the playoffs. And basically, you can look at his entire career and say, you're never going to get a Joel Embiid that gets 2,000 plus minutes in the regular season and a healthy playoffs. That has never happened in his career. This year is the same. And, they kind of put it all on the line to take down Miami in that first round. Super duper close. And for what it's worth, Joel Embiid didn't play well in that game, but he did what my boy Jamal Murray did, which is pulled off a BS game winner. I'm stealing this kind of from Bill James. Bill James named the BS game winner in baseball, calling it the blown save game winner. So in baseball, the way it works is you get a save if you come into a baseball game where your team is winning as a pitcher and you pitch well and your team wins. However, this is messed up. You can come into a baseball game where your team is up as a pitcher. You can give up like 2 or 3 runs, so your team is now losing. But if you complete the inning and sit down, if your team wins, if your team then comes back and scores runs in the next part of the inning, and you are still the pitcher on record, then your team can win and you can get a credited win even though you blew a save. So Bill James kind of tongue in cheek called that the BS game winner, right? Because should you really be credited with winning the game when you blew a save? I've called that the same, the BS game winner in basketball, when a player takes a game winning shot like my boy Jamal Murray did last night against the Lakers. But Brian, if you look at Jamal Murray, I think he had something like 24 shots and he scored 20 points. So, he got the game winner, but if he had just shot like he normally shoots, the Nuggets would have been up by like 10 at that point. And Joel Embiid did that in the Philadelphia 76ers playing game. I actually got to watch that game on the plane when I was going out. And yeah, basically the game was super close. And with the game on the line, he like made a 3, got a rebound, made a pass. So like Joel Embiid played poorly-ish, but still played well in the last 5 minutes. They make it into the first round, but they look pretty dinged up. Flip side, we didn't have this front of the script, but at least things are being released. I guess Tyrese Maxey is named the most improved, which is one that bugs me as well because he's not even close to his peak. If you look at Tyrese Maxey by Boxscore Geeks numbers, we would argue 2 years ago was his best year kind of per minute.
Why don't you take
And
a
we
look at
would,
that points per game column, though, Dre? That might be what they're betting
yeah.
on.
So I was going to say, if you look at his production last year versus this year, it's very similar. If you look at his production in terms of his peak season, that would have been 2 seasons ago. But he went from 20.3 points per game last season to 25.9 points per game this season. Now, funny note, Brian, last season when he's playing next to James Harden, 60.5 true shooting. This year without a James Harden and without Joel Embiid. That was another interesting thing. He actually did look really, really, really good to start the season when Joel Embiid was healthy. Joel Embiid got injured and he kind of took a tumble. And it's, there's probably some, symbiotic relationship there where Joel Embiid drawing all of the attention when he gets the ball probably helps Tyrese Maxey and vice versa. But he dropped to, like 2%, 2.5% on shooting efficiency. But he went up by 5 points per game by just the simple trick. There's more shots to go around without James Harden and Joel Embiid around. and the voters fall for that. So I can't be mad. He's not a bad player, but he is certainly not, it's hard to call a player the most improved when they've done the exact same thing they've done their entire career. They just took more shots because players were injured or traded. But there you go, voters.
No, I like Maxey, and yeah, he was very good early in the year. I think he could definitely become an all-star player in the next few seasons. He's still pretty young, but yeah, I mean, it's a little early to call him an all-star.
Okay, so let's actually just try and quickly go through the playoffs. This should be pretty easy because it's pretty, while there are 8 series to go through, it has just started. As you noted, the leaders are all leading. The Celtics acted like the Miami Heat owed them money, which you could argue they have, embarrassing them to get to the NBA Finals last year. Celtics played like we thought. I have really enjoyed the Cavaliers. Really, the like two towers approach with Mobley and Jarrett have worked out really well. Donovan Mitchell had a good first game, mediocre second game. Bucks shockingly pulled off what you would call an upset because my argument for the Bucks has been that team is Giannis and not much else, and so no Giannis, and they still managed to pull the win in the first game. And I actually do want to look at that really quick. And I was going to say one fun stat that I threw out that I got a little bit of love for is if you looked at their coaches. So like, is it Griffin? Which the
Yeah,
name
Daryl Griffin. Yeah, or
is
is it
Griffin.
him?
So
Oh, is it
it's
someone
Adrian
else?
Griffin.
Oh, Adrian Griffin. I'm sorry.
Adrian Griffin leaves with a 69% win percentage when he gets fired midseason. Joe Prunty takes over, and he's been on the short list for potentially taking over as coach before for the Bucks. I know he's an assistant there for years. 2-1, so 66%. Doc Rivers comes in 17-19 record. So the Bucks have had 3 coaches this season. 2 of them have had a 66% plus win percentage. Doc Rivers has a losing win percentage. That is the epitome of impressiveness. But really the team is Giannis. We would give our MVP vote to Giannis Antetokounmpo. He's not going to get it because he's on a 49-win team. It is actually remarkable. Out west, there are 4 or 5 50-win teams, and out east there is 1, and it's a 60-win team. First game of the playoffs, and I'm just looking over the numbers. I don't have the advanced stats, but it's fun to just take a look. But Damian Lillard does what Damian Lillard does, shot really well, or shot a lot at least. And one player we mentioned, you actually gave this guy some love. Yeah, Damian Lillard, 64.6% true shooting in that first game. Chris Middleton actually remembered how to shoot, 73%. A player you've given some love to, not on the Bucks anymore, but Dante DiVincenzo actually had a really good game. I want to say for the Clippers.
He's on the Knicks.
Or Knicks, sorry,
Yeah.
Knicks. Actually, and that was sorry.
He made like 2 3-pointers during the game. I think he set a Knicks record for threes made in that game or something like that.
Yeah, base, and Bobby Portis looked god awful that first game, but Chris Middleton and Damian Lillard looked absolutely remarkable. And then on the flip side, I know that like Tyrese Halliburton possibly beat up, possibly injured. He didn't look super great. But Pascal Siakam is just shooting really well and did so through 2 games. So it's like, and actually Tyrese didn't do horribly. He just only took 7 shots. That's kind of weird. So never mind. I take that back. Tyrese Halliburton had a good first season. Miles Turner didn't shoot well. So maybe we kind of had this argument preseason, Brian, about if Brook Lopez was going to be worth it and maybe the defense. And maybe he did shut down Miles Turner. And maybe Miles Turner foolishly thought he could take a lot of shots because that really is, if you look at that first game, that really is a lot of the difference is Miles Turner shooting god awful versus Lillard and Chris Middleton shooting quite well for the Bucks versus the Pacers. But that's going to be leveled up. And I don't know off the top of your head, do you know Giannis's injury situation?
No, I thought he might play game 3 is what people are saying, but I'm not sure if that's true. I'm
So
not
he has
sure if
been
they know yet.
It's a left calf injury, and he has been out since the 10th. So that scares me a little because even if he's able to come back, there's a lot of rust there. Um, we'll see what happens. I mean, what I could very easily see happen is the Bucks get, squeak by the Pacers and then fall to the Knicks. Let's go to that series next. So we did Celtics Heat, Cavs. Magic are just weird. One thing that makes me sad is they have a rookie named Anthony Black who isn't that great, but I've been getting a lot of his rookie cards.
He had a nice start to the year. I kind of like him.
He's okay for a rookie. He's not terrible, but he's not getting played in the playoffs. I saw that. But yeah, the Magic just not looking great. The Bucks, we'll have to see what happens. I mean, if Lillard is playing really well, which I do enjoy, because he was getting a lot of flack, just with how the Bucks were doing, et cetera. And oh, was it a failure to trade for him? And we basically argue that while it wasn't a great fit, it wasn't great to trade Drew Holiday, who was defensive minded, for Damian Lillard. Ironically, what they maybe should have tried to do is trade Brook Lopez for Kristaps Porzingis. The real thing was letting Grayson Allen walk because he's quite productive. But Lillard is now playing really well in the playoffs, and maybe that'll pay off well. I really loved a quote that came out of our boy, Jalen Brunson, because he did have quite an awful game in the playoffs. He just shot really bad. And he was just like, hey, look, he's like, I am more than happy to have a bad shoot. If I have a bad shooting night, and we win another game, I'm okay with that. Which, it's hard to be mad at a player that, that's a box score geeks kind of player if ever there was one.
Well, I guess the one thing I'd say is like if Klay Thompson goes up there and takes a bunch of contested shots and is like, yeah, I'm fine with missing all those shots. It's like, I hope they're good shots at least. If he's missing open shots, then that's something good to say.
Yeah. And I mean, for what it's worth, flip side, it's really hard to notice this, but Joel Embiid, 8 for 22, 11 for 12 from the line, which means his true shooting percentage is only 53.2%, which is quite awful for a center. Now,
he can't even move.
I'll give the flip side. Jalen Brunson, 38.4% true shooting. Oh my gosh, what are we even doing here? That puts old school 1960s NBA to shame. But Brian, there are two stars that I love. One is the player who hates analytics, but analytics loves. Josh Hart had a really good game. And then, like I mentioned, you were joking to me right before the playoffs started that, with all of these rule restrictions, like as an example, Tyrese Halliburton is not eligible for MVP. I cannot remember, but people found
He's
an
not?
example. Tyrese Halliburton, because he didn't hit 65 games.
Oh my God, what a joke.
Now, I mean, to be fair, I don't mind the MVP race came down to Doncic, Jokic, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. I'm comfortable with that, to be fair. But you brought up Dante DiVincenzo, who played 81 out of 82 games, and lo and behold, in the first game, not the second game was god awful, but the first game of the NBA playoffs that they won, he actually put up a decent. Yeah, he actually started 37 minutes, 5 for 10 from the field, 19 points, including at the end. So, we do love that. Jalen Brunson has forgotten how to shoot, but they're up 2-0. So that's going to be the real question is like, if Giannis gets healthy in time, so if the Bucks can hold on and win, which isn't even a foregone conclusion at this point, because as mentioned, the Indiana Pacers are going to take tonight. That's already happening at 125 to 108. Sorry to spoil it for those of you listening in future. Sorry, Brian, if you're hoping to DVR it.
Nope.
But yeah, Indiana beat Milwaukee tonight. So they're tied up 1-1. So at bare minimum, that series is going to go for a while. So if Giannis comes back, gets healthy, and Jalen Brunson can't figure out the playoffs, there could be something. But I mean, I candidly think Jalen Brunson's played well in the playoffs before. He'll figure it out. I think the Bucks might just wear themselves out, maybe lose to the next season. That could happen. Next series. But I basically could see out east just the top seed actually holding on, and it's just a real question of how. Basically, it's very Bayesian. If Giannis is healthy, I think the Bucks win in like 6 or 7. If Giannis isn't healthy, that's going to be a very interesting series because I just do not see Lillard and Middleton playing like MVPs together combined with like Halliburton not playing amazing for the rest of the series. So if Giannis is healthy or can get healthy in a game or two, the Bucks win. If not, it's going to be a repeat of last year where they just fall early because Giannis gets injured in the playoffs. I think the Knicks are going to win because you're already saying it. Joel Embiid can't move. Joel Embiid isn't playing great. And he's a little different than Giannis, where I don't think he's going to recover and play well. I just, it's the Derrick Rose problem. A player that just keeps getting injured, you just cannot expect to suddenly come back and play great.
I feel like the Knicks are just loaded this year. We're used to them having no talent at all, and their fans thinking they have all this talent, but they actually do this year. They have two all-star level centers, in my opinion. Like Mitchell Robinson, been a little bit hurt, but he's back and still playing. And Hartenstein, man, he had a hell of a good year. If I were a team that needed a center, like maybe the Warriors, I would probably try to get one of those Knicks centers who should both be starters playing heavy minutes. And you were talking about all their, wing players and guards. Dante DiVincenzo, Josh Hart. We were talking about OG Anunoby earlier. All those guys play defense. All those guys play defense and are efficient on offense. It's just a really good team. They got Bojan Bogdanovic as well. He can shoot. He can still shoot.
He's terrible. But I mean, if we're looking at the top load, I mean, basically, they are kind of like diet Boston.
Yes.
So Boston is just loaded top to bottom. And you could arguably make the argument, you could make the argument that Boston just doesn't have an elite player at the level of Jokic, as when healthy Embiid, as Anthony Davis. I kind of think that playoff mode, Jason Tatum is there. I mean, he starts the playoff off with a triple double. Last year, he put up that 50-point game. So I think Jason Tatum can be that guy. But yeah, just the Knicks do not have a lot of weaknesses in players that are getting major minutes, which is really, really awesome. And Brian, I apologize that we haven't really done this year. I just haven't, the Knicks, despite being good, second seed, like they got to be Team Hart, right? Hart and Hartenstein, like it's right there. What are we doing?
Those two
Team
teams
Hart.
seem way better than the rest of the East to me, for sure.
I agree, especially with all the I mean,
Giannis
Pacers
is
are
hurt,
included.
right?
Yeah, Giannis is hurt. Pacers are included. I mean, Tyrese Halliburton has been in out with injury. And again, that's one of our funny things, because if you look at the end of the year, so like we were kind of noting this, like if the box score geeks just went off of the most boring thing, Giannis would be our MVP, Jokic second place vote, Doncic third place vote, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander fourth place, Domantas Sabonis would be fifth place. Now I was telling you this though, that wait, no, by the way, Tyrese Halliburton would be eligible. He got 70 games in. Although
Okay.
yeah. So Tyrese Halliburton he almost missed eligibility, but Tyrese Halliburton would be eligible for MVP, so never mind. I was actually kind of arguing that I might give my vote to Tyrese Halliburton instead of Sabonis, just because, and it's 69. Sorry, we've got, oh yeah, that's right, Brian. There is a bug on the box score geeks. Sorry, all. And this I hate this so much, Brian. So there was the midseason tournament, the NBA tournament, whatever they called it, right? All of the games of that tournament count as an NBA regular season game except the finals.
Oh yeah.
I love it. I love it. As someone who does data aggregation and tries to automate data scraping because I'm busy, I absolutely love that it's like regular game, regular game, regular game. Not this one, the rest are regular games. Thanks, NBA. But Tyrese Halliburton did manage to get to 69 games played. So nice, right? He would be eligible for
Nice.
MVP. But it was just really funny that when this trade happened, we would still make the argument, because Sabonis is older than Halliburton. Halliburton is on a cheaper contract. We would still make the argument that Halliburton is the better contract to have. But it is funny that when these two were traded for each other, part of my argument as to why the Pacers won was that Sabonis wasn't going to be healthy, and Sabonis has thus far been healthier than Halliburton, although it's still very much a push. And because of the contract situation, Indiana is still in the lead, but I'm very curious to see what will happen there. So, yeah, I mean, really, Halliburton beat up. I don't think you're wrong. I think the Knicks, if the Bucks are beat up, have a really good shot at actually making it to the conference finals. And my money is still on the Celtics. It's just really, they're so good. They're so good,
They
and they're
are.
so loaded.
They
And
have
it's
so
really
many
hard
good
to.
players. The Cavs are a dark horse, I think. They, like you said, they're really blowing up the Magic, who had a good year. The Magic are not a bad team. It's just, I think Cleveland is capable of playing defense at a level that Boston or New York is. And if they have a player like Donovan Mitchell that can get hot, so they could do some damage, but they just don't have the talent those other two teams do.
Yeah, Jared Allen's about a star, it is a star level, but by both of our metrics. The Dre star metric is about 10 wins produced in the regular season. That might change a little, Brian, with how load management has started becoming more in vogue. I would argue correctly. You're saying 200 wins per 48, namely twice as good as an average player. Jared Allen at the top position is that 221 wins per 48, which is good. But I mean, if you compare that to, say, Jokic or Giannis, it's not quite at the same level. But Jared Allen, Donovan Mitchell, Evan Mobley, all really strong players. Mitchell and Mobley are on the cusp of that star threshold we just talked about. Max Struss is, I hope I got the last name right, half
Struess.
Struess. Oh, I love it. That's
He
like
is
very German.
American, I think, but he still
Got the
is the name
German going.
Max Struess. Yeah.
I'll actually throw out that Karis LeVert is just fine, who in past I haven't liked. Darius Garland is a player on that team that I've had issues with in the past. Got that big contract after getting the All-Star nod. And then I don't know how many minutes. I'm curious in the playoffs, but Niang is getting way too many minutes and not great. So let's take a look. Actually, I'm very curious to see how many minutes he's getting in the playoffs and if I think that's going to ding him. But beyond that, I mean, I agree with you that like Cleveland and New York look very strong and well put together as playoff squads. The rest of the East, Bucks, Pacers, 76ers look pretty beat up. Even the Heat look kind of old and beat up, and the Celtics just look poised. So, I mean, the hope for me is that the Celtics kind of pull a Nuggets and just kind of get a very easy path to the NBA
Do you know,
Finals. And
is
then,
Jimmy Butler even playing right now? I'm not sure he is.
ooh, interesting. Did he get injured at in the play-in game?
I mean, he's been hurt. I just don't
Yeah,
know.
he's
No, he's missing the whole series. He's
oh
missing the whole
really?
series.
Oh, he's
Yeah,
gone.
so
All
the
right.
Heat, they don't have much of a chance.
By the way, Niang is playing horribly, but luckily they're playing him lower minutes because it's playoff mode, and that means that Jared Allen and Mobley are going to be getting more. But that's still Niang is going to hurt a little, Garland's going to hurt a little, but the rest of the team is strong enough. So yeah, I mean, Heat are out of here. Magic, it's just hard to come out of a 2-0 hole when you're down to a stronger team. Pacers and Bucks all comes down to Giannis. Knicks and 76ers. Embiid is injured. Knicks are too well. Knicks are so well put together. I mean, this is the point, right? That like Jalen Brunson can play terribly and they can still win. So whenever you've got a team like that in a series, you're in a good spot. With the Thunder Pelican, is it the same situation? Zion is out, right? And I'm not sure for how long.
I'm not as sure about that. I know that he's hurt, but he might have come back. Let's look again because he missed the play-in. Let's see. News.
I'm not seeing his name on the first day, on the first game. So he was inactive. So now for what it's worth, this is really funny. This is making me laugh because Giannis was out and you're like, "Oh, come on,
Oh,
Pacers, that's a give me." And they lose. And Zion's out and I'm like, "Come on, OKC, that's a give me." And they win. They win by 2 points. So
here's the ESPN headline from today. Pelican Zion Williamson says playoffs return is quote unquote definitely realistic. So if he's saying it's realistic, that means they think it's unlikely to happen, and he's trying to
yeah. Oh,
look
funny, you're
for.
going. There's a clip from the show Better Off Ted that I really love, which Ted, the manager, comes in and he's like, "I'm going to be calm and collected and not scare my guys." And the guys freak out because they're like, "Why are you being so calm and collected? What's wrong?" And that's it here. Like coach says everything is fine. You're like, "What the heck is wrong?" OKC forgot how to shoot that first game, and I don't think that keeps up. Um, you know, Shea did all right, but they went, let's see, they went, live by the three, die by the three, took 32 threes, only made 10 of them. New Orleans took 39 threes and only made 11. So both teams actually did horrible from three. We really, man, this was an ugly, I'm just doing an autopsy of the first game. Ugly game. Our boy Valanciunas shows that he's still good. 5 for 9 from the field and 20 rebounds. We have had two 2020 double doubles so far in the playoffs, and I think wasn't Jokic's a triple double, Brian? I'm going to look that up really quick. Um,
Not
But
sure.
yeah, I mean, I gotta say that with Zion injured, it's the same kind of bummer story. And the Thunder are already the better seed, so I can't see them losing that. Clippers Mavericks is interesting, Brian. Did you get a chance to catch that first game?
Yeah, I watched a good part of it. It's an interesting series because that was a series where I didn't look at the Vegas odds, but a lot of pundits were saying, yeah, this higher seed, the Clippers, is probably a big underdog. Kawhi's hurt. We don't like Harden for reasons. Yeah, Mavericks are gonna roll, and that didn't happen. It absolutely did not happen.
And so do we know how long Kawhi is out?
Yeah, there we go. We got to look up injuries for every series because that's all that matters.
Yep. I mean, it's true. And I mean, we've made this point before where I've always kind of hated whenever you hear the line like every team has injuries, and I'm like, no, there's a difference between Kawhi being injured and other players being injured. One thing that is happening that makes me well, there are two things that are happening. Paul George, this game, the current game going on right now, is shooting quite well, so maybe he's remembered how to be Paul George. James Harden actually had a half decent first game, 60 or 71.3 true shooting because he went 6 for 11 from three and was perfect at the line. And James Harden is a good facilitator. Our boy Zubats, though, is the real star of the first game, by the way. 20 points, 15 rebounds. We have always loved him. We loved him on the Lakers. We weren't shocked that, Maverick Jerry West was able to get him onto the Clippers, which was quite good.
Yahoo Sports
So,
says Kawhi's playing in Game 2, so there you go. He's back.
okay, well let's take a look if he's doing good. So I had to do like real time, but I am very curious because of course game 1 went the Clippers way by a large margin. Game 2, yeah, this is terrifying. Kawhi 15 minutes, 1 for 5 from the field. Did have 3 steals and 3 rebounds, so there is that, but doesn't know how to shoot. James Harden and Paul George are both doing quite well. So that's always the rough thing, is to know player coming back from injured, how good they'll be. What are your thoughts, though? What do you think on Clippers versus Mavs? Do you think the Mavs can take it? And if they do you think they've got the experience over the Thunder?
Mm. Ooh, that's a tough call. Of course they can. It's the 4 versus 5, right? So it's not really that big of an upset. I mean, look, it's really hard when you lose Game 1 on the road. That makes you a massive, massive underdog. So they have to. Well, it's not as bad as when losing at home, but still, they they have the best player in Luka, and that's always a good sign. But I like the Clippers as long as Kawhi is healthy. I think they're just a much better team. Just more depth, better, more size, better defenders overall. Just better stars. Yeah, I like the Clippers a lot more.
Yeah, I mean the Clippers, they're in it. They're down by 4. So if the Clippers can hold on to win this second game, that would be absolutely monumental. Kawhi does not look healthy, but if he can get back into playoff shape, that would be huge. It does pain me a little to see Kyrie playing so well. It's amusing because
It's a big deal.
end of the regular or end sorry, not Kawhi, Kyrie. End of the regular season, Kyrie versus Brunson. It's obvious you're like, Brunson's the winner. Let's mock the Mavericks for letting Brunson out the door. Kyrie is on a more expensive contract than Brunson for what it's worth. So the Mavericks have done this a few times. Like they let Steve Nash walk back in the day and said, we can't afford you, and then paid like Jason Hayward or someone like that just as much money, despite the fact that he was the same age. And so
Jason
they did the
Hayward or
same.
Gordon Hayward?
I'm trying to remember. I'll look at it.
Because Jason
It's
is a first baseman, I think.
Oh, yeah, maybe they did go out and get a baseball. I don't remember the name off the top of that. I'll look it up at some point. But basically, I did that. They were like, Steve Nash, we cannot afford you. You're too old and beat up. Go. And he left for like 10 million a season. It's quaint when the numbers were that low. And then they hired another guard in his 30s for just as much money. You're like, what are we even doing here? And so the same thing, Jalen Brunson, they lowball him, he walks, and then they hire Kyrie Irving for a bigger contract. And you can make the argument that, on paper they have similar efficiencies, and certainly Kyrie is having a better playoffs, but just like total games played, health, etc., is much different.
I
All
heard
right,
different reporting than that. I heard that they had no chance at Brunson. He was going to go to New York no matter what.
Oh
He
no,
just
no, I brought this up before that it was very much the NBA 2K problem. So For those that remember back in the day, I don't know modern versions. NBA 2K, you could offer a player a contract, and if you offered them such a bad contract in game, they would say, "My client refuses to deal with you anymore." And now, of course, in any game with a save state, you just reset the game and try again. But in the real world, that can happen. And so basically, Jalen Brunson, when they had the chance to offer an extension, they offered him a really low extension. He was like, no, that was their chance to get him. And then
Hmm.
after they did that, then he was just like, I'm not coming back. So that's
I
my
heard it was
argument.
more like he wants to be near his dad and his
Yeah.
family. It had nothing to do with the contract, but you never
Yeah,
know.
after the fact. And that's what I'm saying.
Hmm.
Like that's the answer for teams is like don't try and be clever with contracts for younger players that look great. Just get it signed. And I made that argument back in the day with Giannis actually when it first looked like he had that spike right before he was like putting up consistent MVP numbers, and they gave him a max. I was like, great. I'm like, give him the max now, then you don't have to worry about it. He looks like he's worth it. In worst case, you'll be able to trade him. And then of course it exceeded even my expectations for that. Last two series now, Brian. Um, I'm debating which one I want to go first. This is the Timberwolves versus the Suns, or the Lakers versus the Nuggets. Let's go Timberwolves now. Timberwolves, Brian. It's hard not to just love them, isn't it? It's hard not to just love the Timberwolves. And like I said, I feel bad because out of college, Anthony Edwards did not look great as a number one pick. Now, this is always such a hard discussion because we are just going by their college numbers say this. If you are expecting a great player now, that is not a great connection. But any rookie contract has upside because they're so low paid relative to the rest of the league. And the fun comparable I heard was, and I know you loved this, is Anthony Edwards this season is the same age as Dwayne Wade was when he came into the NBA because Dwayne Wade played 3 years. Where did he go? Marquette.
Marquette, yep.
Yeah. Ooh, look at me actually knowing college
Yeah.
stuff. So,
Midwest, you got to know Midwest.
oh yeah, that is right. I should anyway. But yeah, Wade goes 3 years. Wade comes out a lot more established than Anthony Edwards, and they look very similar games than ever. And so that's what's funny is because I'm just like, Anthony Edwards is a bad number one pick. Anthony Edwards, I'm like, is not rookie of the year. Anthony Edwards gets to be the same age as Dwayne Wade. And I'm like, Anthony Edwards looks like Dwayne Wade. And if he keeps on that progression, he could turn into a star. And so, I mean, Anthony Edwards, Carl Anthony Towns, Rudy Gobert might be one of the strongest front courts in the NBA, rivaling the front court of Nikola Jokic, Aaron Gordon, and Michael Porter Jr. He didn't have an amazing second game shooting wise, but he's doing everything else 8 assists, 5 rebounds. He had a really good first game. The Timberwolves just look really good. And, the question is health. Mike Conley is just this player that is a fountain of youth, and I don't get it. He's playing really good. And try to throw this, like, I don't want to call it a conspiracy theory out, but this is like Arturo Galetti's point, which is they do steroid testing or drug testing, PED testing less frequently in the playoffs than the regular season. So that actually gives an edge to older players. The one player that I kind of am scared in the rotation is Jade McDaniels, who is oscillated between okay and bad.
And so he's
And
actually the front court guy, Dre. Anthony Edwards is the starting shooting guard, so they're even bigger.
interesting.
They're even bigger than you think they are.
Well, interesting. So, I mean, what we did actually have this talk way early back where like this is the first season where the small forward and shooting guard look the same, which has traditionally not been the case. So it's funny. I mean, that's even more powerful, right? Because if you're basically playing two forwards, we love, and the numbers are going to be at the same. But Jaden McDaniels actually had a really, really good second game, which is in part why the Timberwolves like Anthony Edwards didn't shoot really well. Jaden McDaniels shot really well. The rest of the team did what they were supposed to do. Hard to be mad. Alexander Walker, Nikhil, I think, we've loved him too. He's a great, great bench player. And then if we look on the other side to the Phoenix Suns, actually, Kevin Durant kind of showed his age. Kevin Durant, 6 for 15, not amazing. And us the entire season. Bradley Beal. We are in love with Bradley Beal. Just such a horrible downgrade. And in fact, I mean, I think they would prefer actually Bradley Beal. He did turn it around a little, went to average, but I mean, that's not amazing. I think the Suns still would have been better if they'd have just kept Chris Paul over Bradley Beal, honestly.
I was really in favor of that argument earlier in the year, but the emergence of Grayson Allen has made that kind of interesting.
Oh, okay. I can give
Because,
you that.
well, what you do is you just bring Allen off the bench, right? And he'd be like your third guard, and that would be okay. But yeah, I mean, I'm kind of reaching at straws here. You'd much rather have Chris Paul than Beal.
Although,
Booker and Paul backcourt, that was so
this
good,
this
man.
this makes me sad.
They were the number
Although
one seed with that backcourt, Trey, right?
I mean, yeah, it's Chris Paul just can't win a title. This is hard. This is really hard because Grayson Allen in that game 2 loss for the Suns only
Yeah,
played 17 minutes, but then
he had a great year though.
Eric Gordon randomly shoots 5 for 9, and I hate Eric Gordon on the team, but I can't even be yeah. And Drew Eubanks shoots 4 for 8, so it's kind of this weird one where I'm just like, why didn't you give Allen more play? But here's just the reality. We've done this before. I've called it like the war mentality, the card game war, where you flip 2 cards and see who's best, and if they tie, you draw 3 and keep going. And I mean, just if you stack up the Suns next to the Timberwolves, it's like you can go Kevin Durant, I would say maybe Rudy Gobert, right? And you're like, okay, next. Then you're like, okay, Karl Anthony Towns or Anthony Edwards against maybe Nurkic. Nurkic had a really good comeback season. That was good.
Yeah,
And then you just run out, right? And I mean, I know I'm kind of probably doing heresy here saying that, Devin Booker isn't at the same level, but I would probably put Devin Booker at the same level, if not below Anthony Edwards. He has a super high ceiling, can play great. But if we just look for consistent in and out, and it's just, yeah, the Timberwolves are the better team and are supposed to win. And there isn't really anything about the Suns. And the other simple reality is Kevin Durant has exited that elite tier. Kevin Durant was an MVP caliber player every year. I would still put him close to star, but he is a step down from that top level, which means he is not competing. Rudy Gobert was just outside of our MVP voting, like I think 6th or 7th all. And Kevin Durant actually looked average because he is actually doing the Joel Embiid thing, right? He kept getting injured in and out this season, so missed 8 games, started late in the season. So it really pains me to say that I don't think Kevin Durant is the same elite player he was, but he's not
I
the same elite player he
I want
was.
to pump the brakes on that
Oh,
because,
okay.
well, here's the thing. I put him in the same category basically as LeBron. He hasn't played as long as LeBron or is quite at that same level, but I think he's so good that he can have some off years in his 30s and still come back and have an all-star or maybe even MVP level season after that. Like in the next 2 or 3 years, I wouldn't be surprised if we're saying, KD could be an MVP because he's
Yeah,
been
because
playing hurt this year, I think.
yeah, this was the first year where his 3-point rate dipped. And this is really hilarious to put it this way. His true shooting was only 62.6%, and that is a down year for him. Previous seasons it was 67% plus. So I mean, yeah, you're right. It's not like he went from being able to shoot to not being able to shoot. He went from being able to shoot great to shooting okay and playing injured. So I think I would agree with you. I mean, it depends on how he takes care of himself. He could come back, but at least for this series, I'm not as worried. So we'll see there. All right,
I'm just
Brian.
with the Suns in general. I've been saying this all year. When they put this team together, I'm worried about their defense, and
Yep.
that was a problem in Game 1. They gave up, 56.8 effective field goals. That's not, egregious, but compared to all these other box scores we're looking at, where teams are shooting, 44%, not field goals, but effective field goals, like teams are getting shut down. So yeah, I'd worry about Phoenix's defense.
All right, let's go to my favorite one, Brian. Let's go to my favorite one. Nuggets versus the Lakers. Now, the first game looked just like what we'd expect. Denver Nuggets come out, commanding win, our amazing front court of Jokic, Murray, and Porter Jr. all play great. Let's see. Jokic does not quite get the triple double. Jamal Murray still figuring out his shooting legs. He actually kind of shoots Jalen Brunson level, but 10 assists and 6 rebounds, so we'll give it to him. Michael Porter Jr., by the way, if you look at the splits, like kind of pre All-Star, post All-Star, he has looked fantastic. If Michael Porter Jr. is healthy in the
He had a
playoffs,
huge shot in that game, Dre.
He is just amazing. And just Aaron Gordon, it pains me
Mm.
so much that he has become the modern day Horace Grant. He legitimately is. Because like this box score, 12 points, 11 rebounds, 7 assists. It's just it's not quiet to people who know how to read the box score, but it is quiet to people that give Tyrese Maxey most improved because of 5 points per game. Aaron Gordon, though, is just so damned good. It's it's just and him and Jokic are amazing together. So game one is kind of what we'd expect. The front court of Jokic, Porter Jr., and Gordon play great. Jamal Murray still figuring it out. Game two does go back to classic mode. We really rely on Jokic putting the entire weight of the team on his back. 27 points, 20 rebounds, Brian, 10 assists. He's such a good playoff player. It's ridiculous that is already the Nuggets' best all-time playoff player, which is just ridiculous. Jamal Murray has another really iffy shooting night, and because Jokic is passing really well, an iffy passing night, but BS game winner, Brian, makes the game winner at the end. And on the Lakers side, what's funny is LeBron and Anthony Davis play really well. Anthony Davis plays really well. The sad part for them on the front court was Rui Hachimura, 1 for 7. So that was kind of the big thing there. And the only thing I'm curious about the Nuggets, I actually want to look at their bench. This actually makes me a little happy. Seeing Chris Braun play well, 5 for 8. Happy to see that. Peyton Watson, playoff game, not great. And Reggie Jackson. So actually, the Nuggets bench kind of struggled outside of Chris Braun. But, I've seen Reggie Jackson play well in the past. Peyton Watson is a block machine, maybe just learning it. So I'm not really worried. The Nuggets are up 2-0. The Nuggets are going to have home court, whatever, 2 of the last 4 games. It's really weird to see the Nuggets as the favorites against the Lakers, kind of just demandingly. And you even noted they put Scott Foster as the ref in on game 2, and it was a close game. The Nuggets still managed to win.
Yeah, well, worth noting, DeAndre Jordan got in there game one, I think, and did okay. Um, there's a
Oh,
theory about game two that I've heard that's kind of interesting. That basically Anthony Davis dominated in the first half, and he kind of even shut Jokic down in the first quarter. Like, I think it took a while for him to get his offense going, but then Jokic dominated at the end. So the theory is basically Anthony Davis, he ran out of his gas tank. Like, he had no energy left at the end of the game, and Jokic was just in better shape and kind of ran him into the ground. Now that's like he's probably a little more healthy than Anthony Davis right now. As far as I know, Jokic doesn't have any injuries right now, so that might be a big part of it. But yeah, I mean,
I would I
the
would
Nuggets
say
just crushed him at the end.
there is something to that theory, but I would actually really say fourth quarter, and that has kind of been the Lakers' issue with players like Anthony Davis and LeBron James up there in age. Anthony Davis has an amazing first half, and actually third quarter, 3 for 6, 4 rebounds, including one offensive one. But then if you look at his fourth quarter, Brian, he plays almost 10 minutes. He plays the last 10 minutes of the game, 0 for 1, only one personal foul, only one rebound, compared to Nikola Jokic, 3 for 5 from the field, 6 rebounds, 4 assists. And oh my gosh, man, Jamal Murray has a fourth quarter mode. Jamal Murray, this makes that game even more remarkable, Brian, because he had 24 points on 20 shots, 6 for 8 in the fourth. So
Mm.
basically, it does look like, I mean, you could maybe even make the argument, because I'm saying like Jamal Murray played badly. You could maybe make the argument the Lakers played really great D, stifled the Nuggets for the first 3. And I mean, lo and behold, early on in the third is when they have their highest lead by about 20. And then in the fourth quarter, the Nuggets just outplay him. And, you know, Anthony Davis doesn't play great. LeBron James isn't right, because I was going to say same thing. Maybe LeBron James falls apart, but no, LeBron James 5 for 8 from the field, 2 for 3 from three, 3 rebounds, 1 steal. So basically, the rest of the Lakers wore out except for LeBron James, but then the Nuggets woke up. Jamal Murray, Nikola Jokic played really well, and then Michael Porter Jr., Aaron Gordon, and then even KCP just played good. So That's the story, is that it's not the first half and second half, it's the first three quarters of the last quarter. And that gives me even more hope, because that just means the longer the series goes on, hopefully the Nuggets will keep their legs. Lakers are older. And if the Lakers can't make it to the fourth quarter, that's just a huge edge for the Nuggets, especially if we're going to be playing some of those games at altitude.
Yeah, the one topic of ours about the Lakers over the years have been, how good is GM LeBron or whoever is, calling the shots personnel wise there at bringing in all the other players, because LeBron and AD are Hall of Famers, but who else on that team is going to help them, right? Jared Vanderbilt, that was a great pickup. He's hurt. D'Angelo Russell, solid, but is he going to be a difference maker in this series? He's probably not as good as the Nuggets, complementary players. Austin Reeves, I think, is their third best player by far. He had a great year. I haven't looked at the numbers, but just based on my eye test, didn't look like he's been playing that well. Missing shots and not being very active. I could be wrong, and he could turn around. But yeah, that's the moral of the story. Is Jokic has all this help. Gordon is so good, like you said, and I think he is getting credit amongst the sharps anyway. Maybe not the regular fans.
Yeah, I mean, it is just rough to see him, not get all-star nods, not get all NBA. And I mean, our next
Yeah,
topic is
yeah.
actually like NBA awards. And I'll throw this out. The best Mike Malone has ever done is finish third in Coach of the Year voting.
Mm.
That was before like the Nuggets dynasty. And he didn't make it to the finalists this year, which is kind of remarkable because, the Nuggets are defending champs, improved by 4 wins, have a franchise tying. So close, Brian. We lost by 1 point to the Spurs. We almost had 58 wins, which would have been a franchise record. 57 is still a franchise record, but it's a tie. And, ties are the worst. But with that being said,
Joe Mazzulla
just
got snubbed too.
geez, yeah. I mean, I don't get it. It's funny. I don't know how
Well,
neither
the
of them.
guys that got in there are like Diagino. I'm probably pronouncing it wrong. Diagano. Anyway, I mean that no one expected OKC to be the number one seed, so the coach ends up getting credit for that, even though I'd give more credit to the players.
I mean, let's see. I've got them up, so I'm actually at NBA.com to talk like finalists for each of the awards. And here's the good news. That is one of the answers for the Oklahoma City Thunder, Chet Holmgren, right? The two players, Chet Holmgren and Shea Gilgeous-Alexander, those two both being surprises. Shea, we noticed that he wasn't a surprise in terms of ability. He was a surprise in terms of health. Classic tale, good-looking rookie, good-looking second and third year player, had some injury, rebounded from injury, and is an elite player. Chet Holmgren injured his first year, came in this season, played great, legit rookie of the year caliber player. Um, so I mean that is really the Thunder
I
as to
mean, I
why they're
wasn't surprised when I called him an MVP candidate in our preseason show.
oh, okay. I'm gonna have to go listen, but I wouldn't disagree because I think last year he ended really well. Oh my gosh, Brandon Miller has on that podium, by the way. I would say Chet Holmgren, amazing rookie of the year performance. Victor Wembanyama, we have waxed effusive. I had someone try and get me that's like when I was bashing Victor Wembanyama's Jeep Elite numbers and saying people should slow their roll, and he was even slow to start the NBA season.
I
But I
was
mean,
trying to warn you.
I mean, I was right. I've
Yeah,
argued
that's
this.
true.
I was right. I was like, he's going to take a while to get ready, and then he could be great. And I was right, but I thought it would take at least a season, and he did it in half a season, which is ridiculous. I mean, the numbers are there. You can look at
Wait,
Chet.
did you ever say he shouldn't be the first overall pick, or not?
I think I agreed with first overall pick. I think
Okay,
I agreed
okay.
that I think I basic. I mean, well, I mean, that's the funny thing about the draft is if you're going into the draft, really, we argue if you're looking for supplementing your team, you should trade down or trade away. But I kind of did agree where I was just like, look, Victor Wembanyama, I don't think he's going to be great as a rookie. And to a degree, I was right, right? Like he's not a star player yet for the full season. He was a star player for the second half, which is amazing. Um, but I was just kind of like, there are diamonds. There are players that you just don't know that you just kind of have to take, right? Like that, LeBron James was similar out of high school, right? It's just like, look, you just got to roll the dice on this one because you're not going to have another chance at getting this kind of player. So I did agree with taking him with the number one pick. I basically said, yeah, if you won the draft lottery, you kind of had to take him and just kind of had to accept that he wasn't going to be the difference maker the first season. Wrong on that. Could be, to be fair, could, be the Spurs as well. So, but yeah, I mean, he did it in half a season. I thought it was going to take him at least a season. So, hat tip to that. Let's see. But Brandon Miller, by the way, is the third one. He is terrible. I just look at his stats. That should be Pajemski, in my opinion. That should be Chet, Pajemski, Victor. And we've also accepted this. The awards are kind of nebulous. We can always go by the most productive, right? MVP is most productive player in the NBA. Rookie of the year is most productive rookie. Most improved would be the player whose production improves the most, but there are other kind of implicit criteria. And I think rookie of the year has traditionally had a most likely to succeed slant to it. So I have no complaints with Victor Wembanyama being kind of the name for rookie of the year. And I mean, obviously he's getting it. I'd be really curious. I'm going to have to break down these numbers. Maybe I'll look them over, but Tyrese Maxey got first. Kobe White got second. And I'm going to butcher his name, but Alperen Sengun on Houston got third. I
Shingun.
think Sengun, thank
Yeah.
you, has played
Amen
well.
Thompson is my rookie of the year, by the way.
Oh, I'm talking most improved here.
No, I'm going back to the last topic.
Oh yeah, but okay, but yeah, let's finish. So that's most improved. But yeah, let's finish rookie of the year out. I mean, okay. So to your point, and Amen Thompson, Usser and Amen both played really well. Looked really similar, just production wise, but Amen stayed healthy. I think you're right. Isn't he top of the list, right, in terms of production for rookie?
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah.
By not
most wins and his per minute was wildly good because he played
that is ridiculous.
Yeah. They should have played him more minutes earlier, maybe.
So actually, for ours, Brian, and we'd get in trouble for this if we were just going by production for rookie of the year. Amen Thompson, Brandon Pajemski, Trace Jackson Davis would be our ballot. I mean, we get 5, so I would probably go. And then is it Jamie or Jaime Jaquez?
Jaime Jaquez.
Jaime Jaquez. He is on both. He is awesome, and I love him because he was picked number 18th, and he looks great.
He's awesome, Dre. You know who he kind of reminds me of in a weird way is Draymond Green. Like they have different personalities, obviously, but they're kind of like guys who were really successful in college, played for big time teams that had tournament runs, and were defensive specialists. Although Green is more of one than Jaquez probably, but are good on offense and are super smart players, but just can't really shoot that well and aren't that athletic. So obviously they're going to fall in the draft. But older players, mature beyond their years, that know how to play. Jaquez is great, man. I love him.
Yeah, I've got some of his rookie card stuff too, so I love that. So he would be up. I mean, I'll say this. Would you agree with this? This was a really good rookie class. You just.
How often do you have 5 to 10 guys that just come in and play a ton of minutes and play really well?
So here's an interesting question, Brian. Tell me if I'm wrong or off base here. So let me see if I can put this together. And I give you a team really quick. I'm going to give you a playoff team. So I'm going to say, I didn't even think about this guy, and he's on OKC as well. And this is some bit of personal preference. So I'm going to say Amen Thompson, Brandon Pajemski, Trace Jackson Davis. I'm going to 2 towers it, so I'm going to go with Victor Wembanyama. This is tough, man. Trace, Chet, and Victor. That's 3 amazing centers. I'm going to put Victor as a small board. So I think you could do Thompson, Pajemski, Trace Jackson Davis, Chet Holmgren, and Victor Wembanyama. Then you would just have Jaime Jaquez Jr., Cason Wallace. I mean, this was there is a lot of production. There is a second, third round playoff squad from just rookies this year. And that is not normally the case. So there you go. Walker Kessler last year. All right. So that is so for rookie of the year, I mean, of the players that are going to get it, because they're finalists, we're agreeing Victor Wembanyama. It should go Victor, Chet, Brandon in that order of those 3. We do think that Amen Thompson, Trace Jackson Davis, and Pajemski should get some love. We already discussed the most improved. Let's go. Final MVP is just a joke, right, Brian? It's going to Jokic. That's not even a question.
Probably. Well, let's see. Who else would it be? Luka would be the other one.
Yeah, the finalists are Jokic, Luka, Shea, and they're
Shea's
just
not going to win it. I think he's good enough to win it, but I don't think the voters will go for it.
And I think Luka, just the team isn't good enough, even though he is. So
Yeah.
I think Jokic is going to get it. We do think that Giannis deserves it,
Yep.
um, but I don't think
I
it's
think
going to
I
happen.
saw Ty posting about this that like the Bucks are just so bad, and Giannis carried them harder than ever this year.
It's so painful, and I mean that does make me laugh. Like analytics movement, I do think that Seth Partnow win with the Bucks just probably was not listened to, despite personal disagreements. For those that don't know, Seth Partnow is an advanced analyst who, did a lot of posting for like Nylon Calculus, occasionally took stabs at the Wages of Wins group, because, by the way, I'll just throw this out. A lot of getting jobs is politicking. And if you like have to say you don't like someone to get a job, you say you don't like someone. And, for whatever reason, Dave Barry was very, um, I don't know the word I'd be looking for, but Dave Barry ruffled some feathers early on in the advanced analytics movement. So, like, if you want to get a job with an NBA team, you have to say you don't like Wages of Wins, even though you probably agree with most of the stats underneath. So, we occasionally would bristle with Seth Partnow, but he's not that bad of an analyst. That's the funny thing, is even if I'm like, I disagree with this person's analytics take, and my take is more correct because that's the nerdy thing to do, I'm still like, there's absolutely no way he told them to do that. So the Bucks are kind of have been painful in that, with Jason Kidd, like him, I think he's been was an okay coach. Off court issues suck, but between like Jason Kidd, Seth Partnow, I think the Bucks have wasted good advice. They keep tearing through coaches that are good coaches. It's just painful to see what they've done. I'm at least happy that Giannis has a ring, right? I'm happy for that. Defensive player of the year. This one seems like a no-brainer to me. Rudy Gobert. I made a joke that got a little bit of traction, which is Victor Wembanyama is on the ballot. I don't think he's going to win it for the same reason that like Luka Doncic isn't going to win MVP, which is his team isn't good enough.
I agree.
But I mean, I got to ask your opinion there, Brian. Do you think there is merit to Wemby being defensive player of the year? I mean,
No, actually, I said the exact same thing you did. I went and looked at the Spurs team defense. And I was like, ugh. Now he's not getting a lot of help, obviously, but I think that does disqualify you. Even if you're one of the best defensive players in the league, if your team defense sucks, I don't think you should win the award. Which is the same reason why I think even though Bam Adebayo didn't have a great year, I'm okay putting him in that top three just because the Heat were a great defensive team, and he's by far their best defensive player.
the Heat defensive rating 112.2, fifth in the NBA, and that's what carried them. That's the reason they're a playoff squad, because they're 21st out of 30 in offense. And I mean, now, yeah, for the Spurs, let's just throw this out. By the way, I know this is one of those stats that I actually kind of agree with the take of. Victor Wembanyama led the NBA 250 blocks, right?
Mm.
3.6 per game. Hard to be mad at that. Did rebound pretty good, right? 10.6 rebounds per game, 1.2 steals. I'm okay with your point, right? Where there has to be something there. I've also gone with a kind of Ty Willingham's take that defense is a team activity, and so there's only so much you can do. My joke about Victor Wembanyama being defensive player of the year is like, I really hope he has a first ballot NBA Hall of Fame career. And I really hope he doesn't hurt his chances by winning a defensive player of the year award. So there's
Oh,
that.
brutal.
But I do think Wemby's got an MVP and a defensive player of the year. Like, it's in his future. Like, he could do a David Robinson. So that could happen.
I'd put money
Um,
on it over it not.
on not getting both? You don't think that
No, I'd say
not
I'd
this year?
put I'd say I'd put money on it over it not happening.
Oh, okay, cool. I was like, what? Yeah, I mean, I think if he can be healthy for 10 seasons, I think he could get both. I mean, pretty much Victor Wembanyama winning MVP, it's kind of like if Victor was in Shea's shoes this season, that was a hard sentence, I think he'd have MVP. That's just the 2 cents. For whatever reason, I don't think Shea, maybe they're just giving too much respect to everybody else. Maybe that's the coach of the year. I don't know. I mean, I think he deserves it over Jokic, kind of, if you're looking at like, the way voters go. But I also think there's some weirdness in that I think the voters kind of got fainted by Kendrick Perkins into voting for Embiid last season. And so I think there's the pushback, right?
This
They're
is a
like
makeup call.
it's a makeup award. So yeah, I think that. So that's fine by me. I think that's all the awards. Let me see if I can just get Coach of the Year
Oh,
because
I interrupted you on most improved. I don't think we've talked about that yet.
most improved was Tyrese Maxey has already won it. Um,
Hmm.
and I have not done the analysis to look at who I think does deserve it.
By the
Um,
way, we were talking about how Dante DiVincenzo should be eligible for awards, and this is not an award he should win. He was just healthy and played a lot of minutes. He's been good in the past. I don't think he's. I think he's DiVincenzo's just always been good.
I mean, if they're going to care so much about health and load, they should just have a like perfect attendance thing.
I heard
Here's
someone saying they thought Kobe White had the best improvement, and I've seen him play some good games, but I haven't looked at his numbers. That could be the guy.
ugh. Here's the thing: as a wins produced voter, I would always have an issue voting for someone with a below average wins per 48,
Oh, okay.
even if
Well,
they've
there you go.
improved. And I'm going to take a quick look at him, and basically, I think other people are at the box score geeks. I think it's getting more traffic than it has
What
in a
if
bit, but
he's
no,
a
he
points
got
per
worse.
game guy? Is he a points per game guy? Is that
He
it?
got he got worse. He got worse than last season, and yeah, it's just the points per shot. His points per shot went up.
Well,
He's just taking more
I
shots. So I
should
mean,
trust
that's
what I read then, Dre.
should yeah. I mean, I don't know. I'll maybe try and look at most improved to see who I think deserves it because it's not a dig to Maxi. Like, and I never feel bad. We've had these points where it's like Jaron Jackson winning Defensive Player of the Year last year, Tyrese Maxey winning Most Improved this year. I don't get mad when players that I like win awards just to get accolades because that's nice. But it is always funny when I'm like, well, that's not the accolade I'd have given you, but is what it is.
Yeah, I mean, you can't
Uh,
blame Maxi because he did everything he was told to do, right? We're gonna put the ball in your hands more and have you take more shots. He's like, great, and they're happy with it. But yeah, for me, he's got to raise his efficiency before I think he's that much improved.
all right, let's see. You mentioned this. We're going to put a pin in this, but I would at least want to, mention it because you mentioned the rule changes in the
Oh
NBA.
yeah,
And just how like you were saying this is actually one of those things that makes it hard to start analyzing because there have been some defensive slugfests and sorry to give you some behind the curtain stuff because this is mean because it means it's stuff I'm working on but then probably won't happen but like Jeremy Britton and myself have been talking about looking at wins produced and trying to isolate it more to the game, which gets fascinating, right? Because you would still aggregate a season's wins produced, but instead of doing what we do now, which is you take a player and you compare him to league average, if you always compare the player to game average, to the other players in the game, you would get a different number. And we've kind of even argued that that might even be in the spirit of wins produced, of saying, we are just telling you what happened. And it gets very funny when we basically might say something like, Tim Duncan is less valuable than LeBron James because Tim Duncan on the Spurs, when he gets off the court, a decent player replaces him. Whereas LeBron James, when he gets off the court, like for some of those old Cavaliers teams, like we're getting now for Giannis, you just like pray. You're just like bench, do not give up the lead before he comes back in. So we've kind of talked that kind of thing. So there is like even what you're saying where when the rules change a little it makes it hard to analyze because we're like, well, that's below league average for the season shooting efficiency in that game, and you're going, yeah, but is the rule change making it so that they're more of a defensive slugfest? Because you were saying, I'll let you fill in the gaps on the Adam Silver kind of like teased out of him soundbite.
yeah. I mean, pretty much what happened was the games started getting much lower scoring after the All Star break. People started asking a lot of questions, and finally the league admitted it. They copped to it. It's like, yeah, we did have a behind the curtains rules emphasis change to call less fouls on defensive players when the offensive player is initiating the contact. And everyone seems to love it. There is a game where it was the Celtics against some other team, and there was like two or four free throws taken the whole game by both teams combined, and the Celtics took 0 free throws or something like that. Just an absurd game, and the players afterwards are like, "Oh, I didn't even notice." Well, that was a fun game. So the players like it, the fans like it because they hate the cheap fouls. So it seems like they just solved all kinds of problems with this rule change. But it's not a rule change; it's an emphasis, right? I shouldn't be saying rule change. This is like a developing story. I haven't seen a lot of analysis of it. What is the actual change in scoring? between now and then. I don't even know if we know the date that the change took effect yet. There's just a lot more that I want to look at, because the one article that I did see was from earlier on, when there hadn't been as many games played under that rule change. And what they said was, yeah, the scoring had gone way down, but the free throws had gone down as well, but maybe not enough, to compensate for that scoring differential. So I'm curious what's happened with pace during that time. There's just a lot of things to look at.
Well, I mean, I could even see that, right? Like if there's more free throws, that's more time to rest, maybe, because basketball is a sprinting game.
Oh,
It is funny.
fascinating.
I'm looking over James Harden because that was my question. And here's the
Yeah.
here's the thing. Here we brought this up before. The thing about players like James Harden, who we do think has been MVP caliber, did deserve his MVP, is that they do more than one thing. I don't think there has ever been a actually that's slightly wrong, although not entirely. I think Dennis Rodman in 92, who didn't win the MVP for what it's worth, might be the most one-noted player. Like Rodman rebounded better than everybody, but he still did others. He was still average to above average at other things, but like he was just the best rebounder we had ever seen. But even players like Steve Nash for scoring, also passed. Even Steph Curry, Steph Curry, despite being tiny, rebounds amazingly well. So James Harden, though, I was looking at like the last 20 or so games of the season, and yeah, his scoring dropped. He only hit 20 points one game in that entire run, and it required him taking 23 shots. So it was actually a bad scoring game. But looking, because I knew James Harden was having a good season, he still is hitting those assists. So it is fascinating where, yeah, that lack of free throws is definitely dinging maybe scores, especially scores. And I'd be curious. It's actually, this is rough, man. Dang it, Brian. What's annoying about this is the player we would have wanted to look at most for this would have been Joel Embiid, but I think he was out most of the tail end of the season. That is a bummer. Although Joel Embiid still did get a good number of free throws, so interesting. I wonder. So I wonder if this really more. I mean, for what it's worth, Brian, if we're looking at Embiid as a model, this does kind of point to the old model of go for the bigs that score a lot as opposed to the guards, because the guards going for the Kobe Bryant model, to be honest, Kobe Bryant was great at getting to the line. That might be outdated. And maybe you start going for the big. Maybe you just give Wemby the ball every time and send him right at the hoop.
It's funny. Well, it cuts both ways, right? Because one thing that happened during this period of time when the rule change or the emphasis happened was that the Warriors defense got way, way better. And I'm like, we finally figured it out on defense, right? Well, maybe they were getting some help from the rules. But what was the problem with the Warriors defense before? They're just too small. They can't protect the rim or, get out on the perimeter. And even more of a problem is they're fouling, right? When you're small, you have to foul a lot. So if they're calling less fouls, to me, I'm like, maybe this gave the smaller Warriors defenders a better chance to defend bigger players without fouling.
Out
So
of
I don't know.
curiosity, I'm going to have to look into this more because I'm sure other people have already done the analysis. Because actually,
Yeah.
now scrolling back, there's this big wall of white in Joel Embiid's career games played page this season. So I was looking at, yeah, his free throws dropped too. But the point I'll have is that Joel Embiid is still getting to the line, 5 to 6 times a game as a center attacking the hoop. Whereas, I mean, he was like, I think early in the season, what's the most? He took 23 free throws in January, 21 free throws, 21, 19, 18, 17. All of these occurred in like November and December. So Joel Embiid was getting to the line a lot more. He's getting to it less, but he's still getting to it more than a guard. So, I mean, I think when we're looking at this golden age of Chet Holmgren and Trace Jackson Davis and Victor Wembanyama, all these talented young bigs, and if they're going to emphasize the rules like that, the whole idea of like small ball and centers are dead in the NBA. I don't know, Brian. I don't know. It's exciting.
It seems so dead to me. And Warriors media figures are turning on Warriors small ball, which is kind of funny. I fans probably as well, but I don't know. I mean, the Warriors deciding to go full small for several seasons in a row Because yes, they do have Trace Jackson Davis, and he played great, but he wasn't supposed to play this year. He's a rookie. It's just they had no one on the team, so Steve Kerr's like, I got no choice. So yeah, I would be shocked if the Warriors didn't add a few big men, and yeah, small ball ain't it, Dre. We know that.
I mean, we've argued this before. Small ball is always about special players. With the Bulls, small
Yes.
ball was if you have Michael Jordan and Dennis Rodman, you can play small ball. And the Warriors is the same thing. It's like if you have Draymond Green and Steph Curry, you can play small ball. But it's like, you always hear this term, the next. And I feel bad for LeBron James in the sense that LeBron James is very much in that mold of Larry Bird, Magic Johnson. You could make the argument now like Giannis Antetokounmpo, right? Like that small forward, power forward player that's also a really good ball handler. So like there are comparables and there are comparables year to year. But you get players like Michael Jordan or Steph Curry, and there just has never been a next of either. And I mean, it's too soon to tell on Steph Curry, right? But it's just like I think it's entirely possible. We go the rest of the NBA, the rest of our lifetimes without seeing a shooter like him.
Mm.
So it's just like that's the thing is when people are like small ball is the strategy. It's like, no, the strategy is having unicorn players, to use that term. Sorry, Kevin Durant used it on the wrong player. It's like having unicorn players that no other team has, and you cannot replicate that. You can't just get a Draymond and a Steph Curry. Anyway, all right,
We
Brian.
might not see another Steph Curry in the NBA, but will we see a Steph Curry in the WNBA?
I was excited about that. I'm going to give a shout out to the listen to this name, Brian. This is a perfect podcast name. This is over on the You Don't Even Like This network of podcasts. It is called WNBA. I love it. They're doing a podcast of the WNBA, and they're also going to do a fantasy league that I may be joining. So they did actually have a draft show. I was able to listen. Of course, the big news was Caitlin Clark winning, getting the first pick in the draft and going to Indiana, which is interesting to me, Brian, because Indiana's not that far from me. We actually have relatives out there. So, Brian, I may have to go to Indiana to see, Caitlin Clark game. Interesting fact about that, by the way, I was actually in Indianapolis the weekend of Final Four, and I went there not to see, I didn't get a chance to see anything, but there was like traffic got shut off because a bus came by, and we were like, what's that about? And it was like, oh, it was probably an NCAA team bus. And then also Comic-Con was going on next to my hotel, but I wasn't there for Comic-Con. Robert Patrick was there, which was hilarious because we had just done Double Dragon on Nerd. He was Shuko, the villain in that movie, that
Funny.
terrible worst movie. He was right there, Brian, and literally he conflicted with the only thing I had planned for the entire weekend. So I might have like gone to get a photo op, but it conflicted with the only thing. And also apparently there was a robotics conference going on. So I went to see family and I was like laughing. So I was just like, okay, basketball's over there, Comic-Con's over there, robotics competition's over there. I'm not going to see any of it, but it was a blast. But might have to make an excuse to go back there. Final game, I don't think it was, it's hilarious that the undefeated team, I wish I could have put some money on Brian, but it's hilarious that was it South Carolina, right? But
Yep.
like undefeated team, Caitlin Clark played so well that like Vegas and other gambling sites, other sports books mopped up.
That's funny.
They had to have, right? Because
Yeah.
because Iowa got so much action. It was ridiculous. And then that didn't happen. Now, Brian, I actually did do a second chance bracket for the for not WNBA, for the women's NCAA. And Brian, I went with the bear theme, and it let me down. I went for UCLA, and I forget the other. I did go for UConn for a bit, but I
Baylor
went
Bears, maybe.
might have been Baylor, but I chose two Bears teams to upset in the middle, and I fell apart rather quickly.
I don't think my Cal Bears got too far in that tournament.
Yeah, I think that yeah. So anyway, but anything, I mean, WNBA, there is a lot good going on. Some of the news I'm basically cribbing from the WNBA podcast, but they were noting that the CBA is up for renegotiation. Their ESPN contract is up for renegotiation. So if Caitlin Clark can be kind of this amazing player that everybody's hoping for, and it's also a strong draft class, and then has the best name, right? Her nickname is Buckets, coming out next season.
Yeah.
So there's a lot to be hopeful for in the WNBA.
The commissioner said that they want to get double the value in their next media rights, if you can believe that. I can. I think
Love
it's
it.
probably, yeah. I mean, this, the, I think we might have talked about this before, but the thing that really put the NBA on the map and got it big on TV, Magic, Jordan, Bird, and Jordan, right? Those three guys in the 80s, David Stern getting the TV deals and all that, pushing those three stars. So, do we have those stars, in the WNBA now? Caitlin Clark and whoever else. I mean, pick your star. There's a lot of them. Who's going to get the popularity though?
Angel Reese, I know, is a player that has been getting a lot of love. Like Adam
Well, they've
Todd
won
Brown, he does.
back-to-back titles.
Yeah, LSU. But I'm saying was
Oh, I'm
doing
sorry, Angel Reese, not Asia Wilson. I'm getting my A players mixed up.
too many. Yeah, as well. I mean, there are just a lot of good names
Yeah, she
coming
went
out.
like 6th or 8th in the draft or something like that. So yeah, she's going to be in there.
Yeah, and there. Well, I mean, that's the other thing is that the NBA used to, in like the era of Bird and Magic, have rivalries from college because they would play for 3 or 4 years. Larry Bird was actually a fifth-year senior. Um, and WNBA, because ironically, because it doesn't pay as well, players are incentivized to just get their degree, right? There is actually value in a degree. That used to be the case. Like, that's one of our favorite stories, that Mark Eaton, like at multiple times, had opportunity to go to the NBA. It was like, I don't know, should I be a mechanic instead? Because that was the era, and then that was the pre-Reagan era of the world, where like a union mechanic job paid well enough where you're like, maybe I should do this as a career. And then, he gets into what it was UCLA, right? So he goes to UCLA, and he's like, actually, I should just get my degree, right? And then he's like, maybe I'll go play in Europe. So that's the thing. WNBA, it is still worth it for the players to get their degrees. So they stay for 4 years. So we get these back-to-back things. We get, the John Cena hand in the face, point at the ring
Oh
stuff.
man,
That
I
was
feel
so
really
great last
old.
year.
I feel really old that that's called the John Cena hand.
Really? Is that?
He's not the first one to do it.
Well,
It's
that's like,
okay.
but that's who. I
I
mean,
know. No, you're right. I
Sorry,
mean, that's what most
if,
people think it is. It's
if,
just not the first guy.
if you weren't Brian, I forgot so much because we missed a few shows. Didn't even have WrestleMania on the script. I'm glad
Oh,
I tuned in for that. That was fun. And I was gonna say, to spoil things, John Cena made an appearance, right?
that's right.
So WrestleMania was a lot of fun. But yeah, WNBA I have hope for. And good news is I'm hoping to be invested. I've kind of said this for years, and this might be the year where I actually start building tools, doing stuff for it. We will see. We will see, Brian.
Yeah. No. The thing I'm excited about most for WNBA is that the Bay Area, for the first time ever, is finally getting a team. They're gonna play. They're gonna be the Warriors of some kind. They're owned by the Warriors, and they're gonna play at the Warriors Stadium in San Francisco. They don't have a name yet, but I think they're coming to the league next year or the year after. So, yeah, that'll be exciting.
I was gonna say, have you been following? Because I don't know if they were on the map at one point, but do you know if the Bucks still have a shot? Because I know Milwaukee was on
I don't
was
know.
on the map to maybe, because that would be fun. I am a part owner, I'll put in quotes, of the Green Bay Packers. I own like 1/3 millionth of the team, and I'm not allowed to sell it. So I mean, that's called, that's an NFT. But I am a part owner of the Packers, and if the Bucks got, an affiliate WNBA team, I would love to be a part owner of that. That
Hey,
would
if
be
this
fun.
new media deal ends up being really big, expansion might keep rolling. We'll see.
Yeah, needs it. Last thing, Brian, I'm gonna drop WrestleMania, which is a bummer, but loved the Cody Rhodes storyline. Was fun to watch. Good stuff. I didn't even watch the whole thing, but definitely enjoyed it. But the chess candidates, because we do routinely talk chess on this show. And Brian, I'm sorry that I missed so many shows to miss like the live action, but we have one of the wildest outcomes ever. Gukesh D. He just goes by Gukesh D, but I actually want to get his full last name. I do not have it memorized. Let's get it correct. So it is Damaraju Gukesh, and he goes by Gukesh D. 17 years old, youngest player ever to win the candidates. That's the tournament to compete for the World Chess Championship, and did so, or is doing so going into Ding Liren, who has just looked horrible. Like, you
Oh,
could
really?
imagine the imagine like what's happened before. You've seen this, right? Like with the Milwaukee Bucks. Like the Milwaukee Bucks or the Philadelphia 76ers are what Ding Loren is right now. So everybody is just expecting that whoever was going to play Ding Loren was going to win because Ding Loren won the world championship against Jan Nepomniachtchi 2 years ago and then didn't play for a long time, kept withdrawing from tournaments. And then every time he has played a tournament has looked god awful. And that is a problem because for over the board chess, these are multi-hour games, can go like 6 hours, lots of concentration, lots of preparation, lots of memorization. You were even telling me pre-show this funny thing of when you look at age limits and say like the Olympics, the argument use the argument some people might sell is we can't let these young kids play for their safety. And you went it's kind of the other way because you're going young people don't have the same
They
governors.
have
So
no
in some
fear.
they have no fear, they
Yeah.
have no governors, they're young, they can put it all on the line. And so that
Yeah,
that was
I
kind of
heard back in the 90s or whenever that age limit happened that that was part of it, but I don't know how true that is. That's just what I remember.
but I mean that is kind of the thing is like you even listen to interviews with say Hikaru Nakamura, one of the older players. He came in tied for second place in the candidates. So came up just short of making it. Amazing performance. In fact, this was an amazing candidates because this doesn't normally happen. The very last round had four players in contention. It's an 8-person tournament. Had four players in contention for the spot, and they were all playing each other, which is just absolutely remarkable. And Gukesh played Hikaru and was able to just be calm. Like that's really hard because Gukesh needed a draw and Hikaru needed a win, so Hikaru was going to try and make stuff happen. And Gukesh was able to just basically almost just like patiently just wait it out, like actually play prevent defense to use a bad metaphor, and
Mm.
and hold it right, like basically just say, I'm just going to play D. I'm not going to do anything wild, and I'm not going to let the game get out of hands, and kept his nerves under wraps. On the flip side, Fabiano Caruana, another older player, which is wild to think about, had a
Wait,
win
isn't
in
he like
hand.
30? He's
He's
not,
yeah,
he's not
in
that old.
chess years. That's.
Oh, okay,
I mean,
okay.
at this point, India's got like 4 or 5 players under 21 that are all coming up and looking amazing, Gukesh included.
So we got a non still going though, man. We still
So
got a non.
what is wild is Vishy Anand. It was top 10, and this is maybe the breaking point. Is like Vishy Anand stayed top 10, and Gukesh finally leapfrogged him for top 10
Oh wow.
and is playing for the world. So like this is a ridiculous thing for India to basically say like if you make it to top 10 in the world as an Indian grandmaster, you're a title contender. So that's ridiculous.
Yeah, India and Russia are the best two countries, right? For the most part. Or is that
Russia's probably
changing? That's the way it used to be.
China is start. I mean,
Yeah,
Ding
China.
Loren is from China and has actually won the title. And then on the women's side, the title match is going to be played between two people from China. So it is just like China is turning into a powerhouse. India is turning into a powerhouse. I think Russia still
United
has.
States is turning to a powerhouse
Well,
too in that Final Four.
United States, Fabiano Caruana, Hikaru Nakamura, um, Wesley. So the
Yep.
only issue with that is look at the age of those players. Like they're all older. So
I thought So was still like in his early 20s.
he's not horrible. I think he's late 20s. Wesley,
Really?
there's no way
Time's
Wesley
flying,
So.
Dre. Time's flying.
I know, right? I was gonna tell you there's no conceivable way Wesley So is closer to 20 than 30. Yeah, 1993, so he just turned 31.
Oh,
Sorry
yeah.
to tell
Mm.
you. Right. It's the worst. It's the same thing. You look
Actually,
at
the more I think about it, yeah, he's like the same age as Fabiano, isn't he? Maybe a
yeah,
little.
you look at like basketball players, you're like this old veteran who's been around forever, and they're like 35, and you're like, oh geez, oh geez. All right, Brian. Well, happy to be back. Let's try and keep the bi-weekly up now that I hopefully have travel and stuff off the plate. I really, really hope the Nuggets can go at least another round or two. I mean, it's going to be hard to be mad. What I really want, Brian, is I want a Celtics victory if it can't be the Nuggets. So I want a Nuggets victory as vote number one, but I want a Celtics victory against a Northwest Conference team if it's not the Nuggets. So basically, Thunder or Timberwolves losing to the Celtics is my second scenario behind Nuggets winning it all. First scenario is what I would love for the playoffs.
Yeah, 2 weeks from now, what that should be conference finals roughly. So that'll be a good time to
We'll
talk.
be getting close. We'll be able to. I
Yeah,
mean, it'll be conference semis, kind of middle of conference semis, depending on how fast some of these first rounds go.
yeah, they do drag them out sometimes. Yeah.
It depends on who. I mean, that's the question: is are these going to go to 7? Because I mean, right now these series outside of the Bucks Pacers are pretty lopsided. So we'll have to take a look. By the way, the Clippers were behind before we started talking about them, and after we started talking about them, got ahead. So we'll see if they can keep that up.
Let's see what happens.
All right. Well, this has been the Boxscore Geeks show. You can find advanced stats at the site boxscoregeeks.com. We try and go live every other week, twitch.tv/nerd numbers. And of course, you can catch recaps, iTunes, Stitcher, wherever podcasts are found. I've been your host, Ray Alvarez, found most places as Nerd Numbers. Co-host Brian Foster, found as B Foster on Blue Sky, and Boxscore Brian on X, formerly known as Twitter. We'll see you in 2 weeks.